Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Dana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Nandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Paravajakacharya, Ashtotar, Shishimat, His Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Jai. Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Paravajakacharya, Ashtotar, Shishimat, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktivedanta Jai. Samanta Koti Vaishnava Jai. Namacharya, Srila Bhagavad Thakur Jai. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. All glory to be some of the devotees. All glory to be some of the devotees. All glory to be some of the devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Okay. Alrighty. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 10th day of June 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 14 entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature, and we're studying text number 5 on page 571. Sattvam rajas tamahiti, sattvam rajas tamahiti, guna prakriti sambhavaha, guna sakriti sambhavaha. Nibadnandi mahabaho dehi dehinam avyayam sattvam rajas tamahiti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnandi mahabaho dehi dehinam avyayam sattvam rajas tamahiti Guna Prakati Sambhava Nibadnandi mahabaho dehe dehinamavyayam. Word by word meanings. Sattvam, the mode of goodness. Rajaha, the mode of passion. Tamaha, the mode of ignorance. Iti, thus. Gunaha, the qualities. Prakriti, material nature. Sambhabaha, produced of. Nibadhanti, do condition. Mahabaho, or mighty armed one. Dehe, in this body. Dehinam, the living entity. Abhyayam, eternal. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Purport. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with this material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So in the previous verses, Krishna has described in summary how the creation takes place. That in text 3, the total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Text 4. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. And in the present verse, today's verse, text 5, he's describing the three modes of nature. That's the title of this chapter. That would be the main subject matter. The material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So, of course, the question is, how did we come in contact? And that coming in contact is a result of our own free will. Srila Prabhupada often pointed out that in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, it's a completely harmonious place where all the living entities in different forms, their eternal forms, either as Krishna's friends, or his cows, or his parents, or the gopis, they have their specific relationship with him, and they're satisfied in that relationship as a means of serving him and pleasing him. But the living entities are by nature tatastha shakti. Tatastha means situated on the margin between matter and spirit. We have because we're so minute, although we're by nature spiritual, we have a tendency to also become under the influence of the external energy in our desire to be separate from Krishna and compete with him. So all the souls in this world, and there are uncountable souls in different bodies, have made that mistake. And when we come in contact with the material energy, we become conditioned by these three modes of nature. And as in the human form of life, we have some free choice how we will associate with the modes. We can go to the bar and associate with the mode of ignorance, or we can go to the classical music concert and associate with more of the mode of goodness, or anything in between. So as we habituate ourselves to a certain mode, we become conditioned by that. We prefer music in that mode, we prefer food in that mode, we prefer people in that mode, and we continue in that way, but nothing is pure. The mode of goodness is also adulterated with the mode of passion and ignorance, and sometimes even if we're predominantly in the mode of goodness, we'll fall into the mode of passion or ignorance. And this is how this is going on. Krishna will explain all this in the subsequent verses. So, but this is how we come in contact, and once we are in contact, as we associate with those modes, we become further conditioned, and we maintain our ignorance of our actual nature. one body after another we identify with, and each of those bodies is temporary, but that doesn't matter. We still identify with it until we leave, and then we're put into another body, and it goes on like that perpetually. So this is the real situation of the living entities in this world. And as human beings, we have a unique ability to understand this and to act accordingly, to consciously uplift ourselves, meaning that we can determine that I'm not going to be conditioned by the mode of passion and ignorance. I have these urges, I have these tendencies, but I'm going to act in this way under a higher instruction, the Shastra, the Guru, the Sadhus. And in this way I will become more elevated into the mode of goodness, which is a very good platform for further advancement and purification. So that's the positive. But right now, Krishna is describing how this creation comes about and how all of us are placed in this material world by Krishna in the form of the Purusha avatar, specifically Mahavishnu, through his glance, and impregnates this material energy, and we get the body from the material energy, but we ourselves are not part of the material energy. But we completely forget that, and we identify with whatever material body we may be in. Even in one lifetime, it's quite amazing how our mentality changes, our sense of self certainly changes. And whatever stage we happen to be in, we think, that's who I am. I often point out this example. You've heard it several times probably, but you've never heard it. I used to live in Miami. And just before I got there, they built a hugely expensive boardwalk. I mean, literally on the beach. I didn't live in Miami. I lived in Miami Beach, which is distinctly, And so just before I got there, they had spent a lot of money making this boardwalk. So I literally lived in view of the water, like 50 yards away. So Miami Beach is known for a place where people retire. People who have enough money, they rent a room or they get some on the hotels right on the beach. So there's a lot of older people there. And I don't know if things had changed somewhat, but there was also a contingent that would come up from Brazil during the winter there. It's, of course, not much warmer in Miami. And they would spend time there, in the hotels. And so there would be, I would go out and walk on that boardwalk occasionally. And they had set up a volleyball net, and they were playing young, wealthy Brazilian men and women. And so, tan body and everything, and they're throwing that ball around. And meanwhile, in that boardwalk, the old codgers, would be walking, get a little exercise, So on the one side, you have the youthful, in the full bloom of youth, and they're just a few feet away from these, people on their last legs. So here you have, and I know because, you can remember how it was when you were young, before I had any idea of Krishna consciousness, and how this is me. I'm 18 now, and the feeling is that, there are old people, and you don't constantly think this way, but this is the way you act. They're constitutionally old, and I'm fortunate to be constitutionally young. I mean, theoretically you're going to grow old, but that's like, way in the future, maybe it won't happen. And so you feel like, and you can see the mood. The old people are looking at the young people, and the young people are looking at the old people. And the old people are, unconsciously saying, just wait, you'll... And the young people are not thinking like that. They say, well, the poor people, let's get back to our volleyball game. So that's why the army always recruits these youngsters, because they have this feeling of immortality. That nothing can happen to me. You have your physical strength. It's crazy. So that gives rise to the most amazing thing. There was in the past time in the Mahabharata where the Pandavas are exiled into the forest. I think maybe you've heard of that. And there's the 5 Pandavas and Kunti's there. So they got very thirsty. And so Yudhishthira sent, I think, Arjun first to find some water. So he goes and goes and goes and goes, maybe a mile away, and he finds a nice pond, full of fresh water. And the first thing he does, he wants to take some drink. Maybe he had some kind of a container that he was going to take some back. I don't know. But he wanted to drink. So when he's about to take a drink, he hears a disembodied voice And you know how important those disembodied voices are. You read Krishna book, you know, they often move the plot along. So that disembodied voice was actually the voice of Yamaraj. And he wanted to test each contestant, if you will. And so he said, no, you can't drink. That belongs to me. You can't drink any of that, have any of that water until you answer some of my questions. So Arjun's a Kshatriya, you know, heck with that, you know. So he drank some water, immediately falls unconscious. So Arjun doesn't come back, Yudhishthira's worried, so he sends Bhima after him to find him. He goes, follow the trail, you know, finds the same pond. Same thing happens. He's not about ready to stop. He wants to take some drink and then, you know, take care of Arjun. He falls over. So he sent the twins, Nakula and Sahadev. Same thing happens. So now finally Yudhishthira himself goes. And he sees his brothers there. They're okay. They're breathing, but they're unconscious, you know. So he wants to take some water, and Yamaraj, who happens to be his father, he doesn't recognize the voice, says, no, you have to answer my questions. So he's honest. He's Dharmaraj, you know, son of Dharmaraj. So he never tells a lie. He will never violate property rights, you know, like that. So he says, okay, fire away. So he asks all these questions. And I saw some of the other ones. They're quite interesting. But the one that's most famous is, what's the most amazing thing? Have you ever heard this one before? Okay, you know the answer. So the most amazing thing, he gives this answer. Ahanyahani bhutani gachandihi yamalayam sheshakstava namichanti kimaschayam atakparam. Day by day, millions of human beings are being dragged off to Yamaraj for judgment. In other words, they're dying. But those who are left are acting and thinking in a way that it's not going to happen to me. I heard a lecture where Prabhupada is quoting this, that he's describing that. That somehow we think, yes, my father has died, my mother has died, my friend has died, but I'm not going to die. Of course, you know theoretically you're going to die, but you place it in a place that it's not a concern for you now. That happened to them, and I'm just going to go about my business. So clearly, Krishna consciousness begins from negating that mentality and being concerned with the most important problems, facing up to them. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, darshana, darshana. Krishna says an essential element of knowledge is to see and be aware of the faults, the inevitable faults of material life, comprising, and I like to put them in order, birth, old age, disease, and death. Because in the verse there are always janma mrityu, birth, death, old age, and disease. But there's a certain order that happens. The real kicker of all those four is disease. Who cares if you become old if you don't get disease, right? So, and birth you forget about. That's something you don't remember, and and death is just lasts a minute, a second. It's the disease part, believe me. But in any case, those are the problems. And the general mentality of the atheist, agnostic, those who are not concerned with spiritual life, they say, well, that's just life. That's going to happen to everybody, so let's get about the business of getting and spending and enjoying. You can't do anything about it. So Krishna consciousness or philosophy, the Bhagavad Gita, the Sanatana Dharma, says no. There is an answer to those problems. And without concerning yourself with those problems and its solution, you're no more than an animal. You may be a polished animal trying to enjoy your senses, but it's not human life. And so that's why the Vedanta Sutra begins with this injunction, atato brahma jigyasa. Now this atato is very important. It's two words, ata, ato, means now, therefore. Therefore comes at the end, but it's the first verse of the first sutra. What does that mean? It means that now, therefore, having come to the human form of life and come to this stage of reading the Vedanta Sutra, you should use that human form of life to acquire into these absolute problems, into Brahman. Now we're just reading about Brahman, the kind of Brahma that is the material energy that Krishna impregnates. But this other Brahman means the source of everything. That's also Brahman. Krishna is known as Para Brahman. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, in the 10th chapter it was said. So the supreme absolute truth. But it's defined in the second sutra, that which is the source of everything. So it's not just the source, but Janma Adi. That Adi word is important. Adi means beginning, but it also means etc. etc. So what's etc. after birth? Maintenance and destruction. Those are the three things that the Supreme Absolute does. So once you find the source of everything, and that which was there before there was a creation, and will be there after everything material is destroyed, that's what you should inquire into. And the ultimate, result of that quest is Krishna, as a person, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that begins with understanding the creation here, which we just learned a little bit about, and how we are entrapped and bound in this world, in this life, by the modes of nature. Now, what is it? Triguna, right? Three gunas. So guna also means rope. You're bound up by the ropes. So we learned in this way back in the 7th chapter, 7:14, that Daivi esha gunamahi mama maya adoratyaya. My maya, my material energy, is in the form of these three gunas, is very powerful. You cannot overcome it by your own effort. Duratyaya means impossible to overcome on your own. But maya me tang tarantite. By surrendering unto me, you can easily cross beyond it. Because it's my maya. She's a person. She's also following my instructions. If you surrender unto me and act according to my instructions, or my representative instructions, then she'll loosen her grip and eventually let you go on my orders. That's the idea. So now we're going to hear more about these three modes. The whole chapter deals with that. And here he's just saying that this is the binding force. To understand that these modes, the guna, they're binding like ropes, and one or the other. We may go up to the goodness, it's tinged with passion, down and up and up, but we still stay within the modes of nature until we transcend them entirely, and that instruction will come at the end of the chapter. Very scientific. Okay, any questions on these points? Let us proceed. Text number 6, page 571. Okay. Tatta sattvam nirmalotvat prakashakamanāmayam sukasangena bodhnati jnana-sangena chanagha. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So it's good, but it's not good enough. You still stay conditioned. Purport. The living entities conditioned by material nature are of various types. One is happy, another is very active, and another is helpless. All these types of psychological manifestations are causes of the entity's conditioned status in nature. How they are differently conditioned is explained in this section of the Bhagavad Gita. The mode of goodness is first considered. The effect of developing the mode of goodness in the material world is that one becomes wiser than those otherwise conditioned. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries, and he has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The representative type is the Brahman, who is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. This sense of happiness is due to understanding that in the mode of goodness one is more or less free from sinful reactions. Actually, in the Vedic literature, it is said that the mode of goodness means greater knowledge and a greater sense of happiness. The difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are the scientist and the philosopher. Each is very proud of his knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness in conditioned life makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As such, they are attracted toward working in the mode of goodness, and as long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or of being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of birth and death. But, due to the illusion of the material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant. So, I made an effort to be in the mode of goodness at a certain point. The whole idea of becoming pure in your eating and being careful what kind of people you associate with, and listening to music that's obviously not in the mode of passion and ignorance, but is. I remember I once bought the Mass in B minor of Bach. Did you ever listen to that? He's a cultured gentleman here. You know that one, right? And it was actually part of the attraction for me was that it was religious. Even though I was not religious at the time, but I was somewhere along the way I was attracted to that. And how did I buy it? An actual tape, not a cassette tape. It was a tape. I had to buy a tape recorder and everything so I could listen to that. That was the only format that I was able to find it in. And I remember listening to that. I think I had the libretto. I was looking at the words and everything like that. So, but the thing is, without a systematic training and something like we have in bhakti yoga, you can get into that mode for a while, and then you can easily fall out of it. Especially in an environment where everyone else is, most people are in the mode of passion and ignorance, and if you weaken a little bit, all you got to do is press a couple of buttons, and then you can just float along in some kind of movie or something like that. So, especially in the modern age, Kali Yuga, the mode of passion and ignorance is much more prominent and much more powerful. And there's this, it's described in the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, how this age degrades over the 427,000 years. It's predicting the future. Various kings come about, to power who are just exploiting the people. They're evil persons. And so, how can you maintain the mode of goodness like that on a material level? It's not possible. So you become conditioned, even if you're able to get in that mode. It's still a material desire. Just like we have this, it's so clearly mentioned in the Bhagavatam, how the desire for liberation, that's a material desire ultimately. It may be better than some gross thing in passion and ignorance, but still you want to be freed from birth, death, old age, and disease. And that's ultimately material, because it's not concerned with the pleasure of Krishna or saving anybody. Very clearly, this expressed by Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev. So it's an illusion to think that and it's happened all the time. People say, we're going to have an intentional community. We're going to go out to the land, pure land. We'll find out where there's pure water and everything, and we'll live a pure life. And those who want to live with us, according to some principles, they find some leader, But it's all based on material desire to be free from. It's a kind of a desire for liberation. And it can't be maintained. It can't be sustained. There have been so many of these communities that have started over the history of America. And there's usually a religious component to some, the whole Mormon thing started like that. And it's still going, But what ultimately, without a systematic means of understanding Krishna, understanding God, and purification of the mind, body, senses, and intelligence through the process of bhakti yoga, it's all simply, as will be described here, how it's just like a big ocean. Sometimes, the mode of ignorance becomes promise, sometimes passion, sometimes goodness, and there's all these varieties, combinations that are there. You don't really make any progress. And still until you learn, as we will learn at the end, how one can transcend the modes entirely and come to the firmly fixed on the platform of Vasudev, which is pure goodness in which Krishna manifests. So that's going to come up, and so the mode of goodness is not good enough. It's never pure, and you become conditioned by that sense of happiness and peace and like this. Okay, if there are no questions, we'll go on. The mode of passion. Vajo ragatmakam vidhi Trishna Sangha Samudbhavam Tanna Badhnati Kaunteya Karma Sanghena Dehinam. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. Purport: the mode of passion is characterized by the attraction between man and woman. Woman has attraction for man, and man has attraction for woman. This is called the mode of passion. And when the mode of passion is increased, one develops the hankering for material enjoyment. He wants to enjoy sense gratification. For sense gratification, a man in the mode of passion wants some honor in society or in the nation, and he wants to have a happy family with nice children, wife, and house. These are the products of the mode of passion. As long as one is hankering after these things, he has to work very hard. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that he becomes associated with the fruits of his activities and thus becomes bound by such activities. In order to please his wife, children, and society, and to keep up his prestige, one has to work. Therefore, the whole material world is more or less in the mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of the mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be in the mode of goodness. If there is no liberation for those in the mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in the mode of passion? So this is, the binding force in this world, attraction between male and female. And as explained nicely at the end of the 3rd chapter, this kama is our main enemy. Arjuna wanted to know, just like this, when you get involved in ordinary material life, there are certain imperatives that you have to work hard, make money, and this and that, and what's my prestige, and all of that creates a certain amount of anxiety, in your mind, and you're bound by that. Your duties, your aspirations are all in that line, And if someone tries to explain to you how this is not the purpose of life, and you should think of, you don't have time for that. It's not in the in the program. You can be completely involved in that. So at the end of chapter 3, Arjuna he talks about kama. How kama is really our enemy in this world. Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhava, born of the rajaguna, passion mode. Samudbhava, mahashano mahapapma vidyanami hivaidinam, is a all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. It doesn't, in a few verses he says, after that he says, it's never satisfied and burns like fire. In other words, one thing leads to another. Just like we see, the predations of the multimillionaires and the billionaires in this world. Who needs, $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion, $50 billion? It's obscene. All of that money, all of that, could be used for such good, building temples and, feeding people and doing so many things. But no, it's all under the control of these guys. It's a perfect example of how there's no end to it. Kama breeds lobha, greed. And that greed is also ever expanding. There's never enough. I only have 2 billion and he has 50 billion. I gotta, and the only way to get all that money is to cheat, manipulate, and there's so many casualties. People who, like what happened in 2008 with the crash of the real estate and that whole thing, Millions of people lost their homes because they were sold some faulty mortgages. I forget how it all worked, but it was all the cheating process, And some guys, they were bailed out, and they remained billionaires, and so thousands and millions of people lost their homes, and like that. And so, No, that Madoff is a special case. Yeah, but he was, they dumped on him and made him like the example of it. But the whole system was corrupt. He made off with the money. But so the idea is that, and even those who at the time, make all that money, you can imagine the sinful reactions they're accruing. Nobody comes out ahead in this game, of lust and greed and all this acquisition, and that's all the mode of passion. So the mode of passion is a very great enemy. And for aspiring devotees, we have to channel that energy into service of Krishna. This was Prabhupada's great genius. He gave us all this activity that we need to do. And the primary way to channel it is Harinam, Sankirtan. That's why the dancing is so important. You have these youthful bodies, because my body isn't so useful anymore, But still, the dancing and the chanting, and this sublimates the passion. And instead of being directed toward sense gratification, it's directed toward glorification of Krishna. And it never gets old. It's not like, oh, I'm not 30 anymore, I can't dance and chant. No, you can still dance. You can still chant, In other words, whatever you can do, and if you can't dance, it's all right, as long as you chant and hear. But the point is that the process of chanting the holy name, especially in Sankirtan, that is the Yuga Dharma, that can mitigate this passion, so you're not controlled by it, and it redirects it. I love this word sublimating because it's exactly what that word, you studied in psychology at all? It's like taking this lower energy and using it for higher purposes, So that's, the mode of passion is a big problem. It conditions us. But, Trishna Sangha Samudhavam, it's associating with these desires. Now just see what a society we live in. The whole purpose of the people who are trying to sell you things is to somehow, implant a seed of desire. Like they know, from going on the internet, they know I'm an old guy now. So I'm always getting this thing. Are you on Medicare? Are you on Medicaid? We have this thing for you. And so many potions and pills, they try to sell you. So that's demonic, actually. It's demonic to play on people's material desire, rather, as Prabhupada did, to show you how you can give up this material desire and actually use that same energy for connecting to Krishna and breaking free of these modes of nature, which are just like ropes binding us to this world. Okay, now the mode of ignorance. Okay, Mike.
Tapas says, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam to His Grace Dravida Prabhu and all devotees in temple. Thank you, Dravida Prabhu, for a wonderful class. How do we transcend 3 modes of nature and overcome urge to enjoy our senses?
Well, at the return to text number 26, that's in this chapter. Arjuna asked the same question. And text 21, O my Lord, by what symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these 3 modes? What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the modes of nature? And so that's answered in the last part of the text 22 and 25 are the symptoms and the behavior. And text 26 is this very famous verse, Mam Chiyova Bicharina Bhakti Yogina Sevate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So how to transcend? That's what we do in this Harekrishna movement. Read the nectar of devotion, nectar of instruction, and hearing, chanting, remembering, serving. That's the process of transcending the modes. Now, it's not that our goal is not to transcend the modes. Our goal is to attain pure love for Krishna. But in the process of doing that, you transcend the modes. That's the idea. But that is the answer to the question. All right, we don't want to miss the mode of ignorance here. Tamastva jnana jambidhi mohanang sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabhis tanna badhnati bharata. Oh, son of Bharata. I'm not sure if this is a misprint, but it's not going to be changed. Scion of Bharata, descendant. There are many places where it says scion. Anyway, O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Purport. In this verse, the specific application of the word to is very significant. This means that the mode of ignorance is a very peculiar qualification of the embodied soul. The mode of ignorance is just the opposite of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, by development of knowledge, one can understand what is what. But the mode of ignorance is just the opposite. Everyone under the spell of the mode of ignorance becomes mad, and a madman cannot understand what is what. Instead of making advancement, one becomes degraded. The definition of the mode of ignorance is stated in the Vedic literature. Vastu yatatmya jnanavarakam viparya jnana janakam tamaha. Here's that word viparya. Do you recognize it? I mentioned how Akrura mentioned it. Just the opposite. Under the spell of ignorance, one cannot understand a thing as it is, For example, everyone can see that his grandfather has died, and therefore he will also die. Man is mortal. The children that he conceives will also die, so death is sure. Still, people are madly accumulating money and working very hard all day and night, not caring for the eternal spirit. This is madness. In their madness, they are very reluctant to make advancement in spiritual understanding. Such people are very lazy. When they are invited to associate for spiritual understanding, they are not much interested. They are not even active like the man who is controlled by the mode of passion. Thus, another symptom of one embedded in the mode of ignorance is that he sleeps more than is required. 6 hours of sleep is sufficient. But a man in the mode of ignorance sleeps at least 10 or 12 hours a day. Such a man appears to be always dejected and is addicted to intoxicants and sleeping. These are the symptoms of a person conditioned by the mode of ignorance. So, I don't know about you, but I've had my bout with the mode of ignorance. Just no get up and go, no desire to do anything, no ambition, just sleeping around. And usually wherever you're living gets dirty because you don't clean it. That's another thing, So there's a reason it's called the mode of ignorance, and Prabhupada explains that, is that you've completely lost touch, not only with, some impetus for transcendence and finding out the absolute truth, but even for getting ahead materially. You're beat. Like these poor people on the street, most of them are conducted by this mode of ignorance. So I don't know if you noticed, but one guy died out here in the alley. Yeah. I saw when the cops had come. They had all these things piled up. You had like I counted them, like 12 different carts. That was all one guy, his whole house or something. No. In the alley, and you go down toward Dawes, in the alleyway.
Yeah, but there's one person who's always like down the corner.
No. This was somebody else. Did you? I don't know if you walked down there, but there were an array of like 6 or 10 push carts full of stuff, and the guy had a little doll, and he had a hula hoop. I noticed it. Obviously, his whole house he had empty. So I saw him lying there in the morning, and he was moving his feet and this and that. He was all stretched out halfway in the road, in the alley. And I thought he was intoxicated or anything or something. And later on, I came by and I saw the cops had come, and someone had called and said he's not moving. So they took him, but they left all the stuff, And so then this morning, on the way to Mangalartik in the dark, a couple of guys were scavenging there, and I told them, "Don't worry about it. The poor guy died, and it's all yours." So they really cleaned it up. I mean, they did something. But that's we had our own guy. Remember Parshuram? He was here. It was a tragic situation. He had been a Pujari in Denver, and somehow he got into drinking, probably in the 80s when all the guru thing happened. And his kids had disowned him, he had grown-up children. He was kind of in his 50s probably. So he ended up here, and he was just sleeping outside here. And then we find out he's a devotee, and said, "Well, why don't you, wash the pots?" He became the pot washer. But the poor guy, couldn't give up his alcohol. He also lived upstairs. Yeah, and he would come out here and he would steal the money from the hundi. He had like a hanger, and he put it in with some gum or something. This is before we had a way of stopping that. And there was one lady. What was her name? She lived with your mother. Huh? Kumari. She was a Brahmin lady, older Indian lady who was doing pujari work. And she would sit and she would chant a lot all day, and she would read the Bhagavad Gita every day. She had a little Gita, just a Sanskrit. So she's sitting in the dark over here, and he comes in, he doesn't notice her. And, anyway, he was busted. Kicked him out. And poor guy ended up on the beach, and still drinking. Eventually, he drank himself to death. So even devotees can fall into that if they're not careful. But the point is that it's a very dangerous mode, because as soon as you get into that, it very strongly covers your knowledge, and you lose your confidence that you can break out of it. You're stuck, usually in an intoxicated thing or something, and so that's why it's so important to observe the regulations that keep you in the mode of goodness, like in an ashram. right? There's always time to clean. I think we should do a major cleanup of this temple. Uplift everybody. But it's important to accept that discipline as the prerequisites for advancing in devotional service. It's very hard to advance out of these lower modes. You need an environment. That's why Prabhupada was so keen on setting up ashrams and temples to keep us regulated, which is automatically helps to be in the mode of goodness. So these are the different modes, and he will explain how they're different combinations, and first the results of the different modes, and then how no one's purely in this mode or that mode. Even someone in the mode of ignorance may have an impetus to be in the mode of passion, or even goodness at a point. There's a predominance of certain mode. But the point is that they bind us. They cover our real knowledge. And we should be conscious of how they work and consciously do those things that keep us in higher modes and ultimately transcendence. Okay, we have a little time here. Let's see what the results of these modes are. Text 9. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati vajakarmani bharata jnanamavritta tutama pramade sanjayatyuta. O son of Bharat, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to food of action. And ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. Purport. A person in the mode of goodness is satisfied by his work or intellectual pursuit. Just as a philosopher, scientist, or educator may be engaged in a particular field of knowledge and may be satisfied in that way. A man in the mode of passion may be engaged in fruitive activity. He owns as much as he can and spends for good causes. Sometimes he tries to open hospitals, give to charity institutions, etc. These are signs of one in the mode of passion. And the mode of ignorance covers knowledge. In the mode of ignorance, whatever one does is good neither for him nor for anyone. All right, let's go on. Vajas tamas chabi bhuya sattvam bhavati bharata Rajak sattvam tamas chaiva tamak sattvam bhajastata. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the mode of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharat. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. Purport. When the mode of passion is prominent, the mode of goodness and ignorance are defeated. When the mode of goodness is prominent, passion and ignorance are defeated. And when the mode of ignorance is prominent, passion and goodness are defeated. This competition is always going on. Therefore, one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness has to transcend these three modes. The prominence of some certain mode of nature is manifested in one's dealings, in his activities, in eating, etc. All this will be explained in later chapters. But if one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the modes of ignorance and passion. One can similarly develop the mode of passion and defeat goodness and ignorance, or one can develop the mode of ignorance and defeat goodness and passion. Although there are these three modes of material nature, if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness, and by transcending the mode of goodness, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called the Vasudeva state, a state in which one can understand the science of God. By the manifestation of particular activities, it can be understood in what mode of nature one is situated. Now, one thing that I've noticed over the years is that someone who's like a vegetarian and likes to practice yoga and stuff like that is more likely to be receptive to Krishna consciousness. I mean, because if you're in the mode of goodness, or at least tending toward the mode of goodness, these subject matters are more appealing to you. You're not so much in this mood of how can I enjoy, how can I get this, and which is the mode of passion and ignorance. So, and that's why to stay in the mode of goodness, even as devotees, is important, because it means that your interest and your ability to discipline yourself and really follow the programs, which may be a little austere, you can maintain that determination.
if you're allowing these lower passions to take over, then that weakens your determination to follow the principles strictly. And I mean, I've seen it over these 47 years. You know, Prabhupada initiated 4,800 devotees or so. And many of them, they, you know, I mean, they're all great souls, but to follow this, you know, the program, especially after Prabhupada disappeared, is very difficult. You know, just strictly enough to maintain your enthusiasm and to be confident and be comfortable in the association of devotees. This is how Krishna protects his movement, you know, is that because the tendency in every established religion is for it to deviate and to become less strict. You know, even in Lord Chaitanya's movement, all of these impurities entered in and these upasampradayas, you know. And so it became covered, the actual practice of Chaitanya Bhakti, until Bhaktivinoda Thakur, by his great will and effort, revived it in the late 19th century. And we're heirs to that. So in our own individual spiritual life, it's a struggle, you know, for quite a while until you really get to the platform, probably talking about a platform of, you know, pure goodness and nishtha, very strong determination, to maintain the principles that keep you in the mode of goodness and keep you determined to follow the program that's been laid out. And that's why, you know, living together or staying together, being regulated and coming to the program, getting good association is so important, because it allows us to keep uplifting so that we get used to being on these higher modes and even tasting pure goodness and Krishna consciousness. It's just a science, you know, it's the way the mind works. And so that's what he's describing here, and that's what we'll explore beginning on Monday. Now we finished with text 10. I brought a little marker here, so I'm not going to lose my place. We already have we'll begin with text 11 on Monday. Okay. So we have a couple of minutes here. Why don't I share with you this nice poem by Sri Nilakanta. We used to think it was anonymous, but we found out it was. It's called the Kevalashtaka. And this is about the holy name. How did you find out? How do we find out? You know, I found out a few years ago when Suki Bhakta came back from India, and he gave me the news. Then I saw there was an article on Dandavats. There was an article about that. You made a poem for this. I did, yeah. So it's an Ashtaka, but we found this is only 8 of 100 verses he wrote. Somebody picked those out. So the first one goes like this. Modaram modarebhyopi, mangalebhyopi mangalam, pavanam pavanebhyopi, hare namaiva kevalam. Now, some of you may recognize that last line. That comes from the famous verse, hare nama aiva kevalam, kalo nasteva 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 gatananda. That in this age of Kali, there's no other way but chanting the holy name for making advancement. So that became the theme. So I'll give you the English because we don't have time for all the Sanskrit. So he says, of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of things that purify, it purifies most powerfully. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. From Brahma's realm atop the sky, you've heard this before? Oh, I did? Okay. From Brahma's realm atop the sky, down to the lowly grass, illusion reigns in Maya Devi's treacherous morass. The truth, the only truth, the name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. He's the Guru, he's the Father, he's the friend most true. And she's the real mother, who most kindly teaches you to always chant and hear the holy name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Now this is my favorite one, this next one. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Lord Shri Hari forever dwells wherever devotees, whose hearts are fixed on him and free of all impurities, uplift their voices high and sing his name in ecstasy. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Alas, what sorrow, what great pain, the worst calamity, for people to forget the holy name of Shri Hari. Although the name's a priceless gem, mere broken glass they see. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Just fill your ears, just fill them with the name of Shri Hari. Just chant the name with all sincerity. Just sing the holy name eternally. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. It makes this world appear like bits of straw upon the ground. Resplendently it reigns supreme. Divinity and sound is filled with transcendental bliss and peerless purity. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Now, since these 8 were taken out of the 100, there's no Palashuti, so I wrote my own. And amazingly, his name fit right in. I didn't have to do any adjusting. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Shri Hari, that's the old one. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Shri Hari, Shri Nilakanta wrote this poem in Sanskrit poetry. I pray that those who hear this lowly version made by me will chant the holy name of Shri Hari in ecstasy. And that's all we have time for. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.